As a vet, performing surgery on my friend's pets comes with the territory. And knowing a client and patient so well definitely adds to the pressure, but it can also be incredible. It's not often as a vet you get to see the lifelong effects of surgery, and for my friend Ali and her dog Wilberforce, I've got to do exactly that. After I performed vital surgery in an attempt to right the wrongs of his breed.
I've known Scott a long time. I met him through my dog when he was just working at my local vet practice. And my dog got cancer, and we tried a reasonably new treatment on him, which meant that I had to keep going in for blood tests every fortnight, every 3 weeks, sometimes every week. And as a consequence, we just got chatting, and you know, he's turned into one of my best friends, which is, you meet people in all kinds of ways. I happened to meet him over a vet table with a dog with cancer, but I'm so glad I did.
One of the reasons Ali and I became such good friends is because of our shared love of rescue. Ali volunteers 4 times a week at her local RSPCA and is a huge advocate for our rescue animals.
I always say my volunteering at rescue is selfish because I think I get more out of it than I give to the dogs, but it's my happy place. It's where I feel valuable, valued, and I think I can make a little bit of a difference to one dog every day. It may not change the outcome for that dog on that day or for life, but for that moment that I'm with that dog, I can make sure that it knows it's loved, it's cared for, it's having a good time, there's some joy in its life. So, and that, as with any kind of care, I think brings joy to the person that's doing it. So it's a dual activity. I can't say it's selfless because I definitely get something out of it. And as a consequence, it falls into why do I rescue? There are so many animals out there that are loving and lovely and would make a great pet, and there is still a stigma attached to rescue of old, and I can slowly change that one dog at a time, I think. So I'm always advocating for rescue. I'm always telling everyone that my lovely dog is a rescue.
And that dog is Wilberforce, who Ali adopted 2 years ago.
Wilbur came into the centre with his mum and his sister. I think they'd lost 1 or 2 of the litter. It wasn't a case of cruelty, it was just where his needs were not being met fully at the home, and the lady decided that the best thing for her dogs was to be signed over to the RSPCA. My partner has always wanted an English bulldog. I have always said no because the breed is so damaged. Only if they were rescue is what I said, and then one came into rescue and here he is. People don't seem to be as aware that these dogs with flat faces are suffering every minute of every day. They can't breathe properly. So I always felt that taking one on was the wrong thing to do because it would people would see me with it and think it's an okay breed. But this dog existed. He was in the world. He needed a home, and so you know I always think my home is better than anybody else's. So I thought at least if I bring him home, and I know a pretty good vet, we can try and sort out some of his issues.
Despite only being 12 weeks old when Ali brought Wilbur home, the shocking consequences of his breed soon start to show.
As a flat-faced breed, Wilbur has all of the standard problems that all of the flat-faced breeds has. The most obvious one is this, which is the panting, overheating, and his tongue is so massive that it takes up quite a lot of his very small squash mouth. But what he also has is skin issues. Most of these dogs carry certain skin allergies or skin problems. I have to clean his feet every day. We have salt baths almost every day. I have to clean his ears every day. He started to get an obvious skin fold. He's the one suffering with the hot spots, with the fungal infections, with the pain, because skin on skin breaks the skin. If that skin is then hairy and sweaty and hot, which it is, it becomes like a cesspool of bacteria, and then it's sore and the skin breaks. So I would clean it and then dry it, and then at least 2 or 3 times a day I would try and dry it again. So it's not just the breathing, it's just the breathing is by far the most important, I think, for comfort. So he was always relatively active, running around, but again, it was limited because he ran out of breath. You know, he's like a very unfit person. You can only get so much air in, and that limits you. I cannot imagine what it must be like to not get enough air in 24 hours a day. If I'm ever caught short of breath, you know, if it ever happens to you, it's actually quite scary, and I think a lot of these dogs are living with that day in and day out. So his snoring was so loud, I couldn't sleep through it. It would interrupt TV. It felt like the room was reverberating sometimes. I get that people think that's funny, and you see it all over social media that it's cute. It's not cute. If you really think about why they're snoring, you have to think, I've got to try and help that.
From the moment Ali adopted Wilberforce, we knew surgery was inevitable, but we had to wait until he was about a year old to ensure he was fully grown and all structures were fully developed.
It wasn't an easy year because all that time I know my dog is struggling for air, struggling to breathe. You just limit them, and you are aware all the time that if they start panting or they're looking short of breath, that you need to rein it in. There were a couple of times before the surgery where he had no breath. He caught himself, and that is terrifying. I mean, it was terrifying for me because I'm going to lose my little boy, but for him, I can't imagine what that must be like. And literally on the sofa, just on the sofa, and no air. And you're trying to like not panic and just try and move the tongue or whatever you're trying to do to just get some airway in. It's very difficult for me to talk about this without getting really incensed. These breeds are not healthy. They are not breeding for welfare or temperament or health. They're breeding because they want a dog to look a certain way, and I can almost forgive the Victorians because they didn't really understand the consequences of their actions, but we absolutely do. The Netherlands have banned the breeding of these flat-faced breeds, which is quite telling for it actually to get to government and to law. They're not healthy. The fact that we all have to spend money at the vet to try and fix a problem that shouldn't be there in the first place makes me really angry. I mean, I appreciate I'm being interviewed now. If you met me on the street, I can get quite incensed because we create the problem and the dogs suffer. And I think that's unforgivable.
Now Wilbur was a year old, Ali and I could discuss the all-important surgery options. BOAS surgery, or brachycephalic obstructive airway syndrome, was always a given to remove the soft palate blocking Wilbur's airway and to widen his nostrils to increase the amount of oxygen that he could breathe in. But there was a newer surgery I wanted to propose to Ali to tackle his skin fold.
And so, we talked about it, Scott and I, what can be done. And what can be done is that skin fold can be cut out. Scott pointed out to me that it was affecting his vision. And since then, I now look at dogs with folds all the time and go, God, it's affecting their vision too. So I think not only that, but he's contending with not being able to see properly over it. And then the decision was made that I think it's the right thing to do for his welfare.
The plan was to remove the skin fold entirely, to flatten the skin on the face and reduce the crevices that led to infection and discomfort.
I'm always nervous about putting my dogs under the knife. They're my dogs, and surgery carries risks. We've all signed the paperwork. I'm always less nervous because it's Scott. I think probably Scott's more nervous because it's my dog. But I think the skin fold was a little bit of a leap of faith for both of us. And not knowing how long he was going to be in there, or if it was going to work, or if he was going to be able to do it. I had absolutely no problem with what he was going to look like when he came out. I don't care. I just want him to be able to breathe and be as comfortable as he can be in the skin that we've given him, which already has its own problems.
After 4 hours in surgery, the complex but hopefully life-changing surgery was over. We've finished a very long surgery, 3 hours, and there you go. There's his new face. So he's got nostrils. He doesn't have those really massive facial folds. It did take a lot of work, but I've managed to unwind some of his congenital malformations, and hopefully now he'll have a much more comfortable life where he'll be able to breathe properly.
Wilbur's surgery was epic. It was very late. I remember that surgery had actually closed when I came to pick him up because it's, as I say, it's complicated surgery, and I think it's one of those surgeries you can't particularly plan for in the same way that you can with routine surgeries. It's not until you start cutting that you know what you're dealing with and how you're going to make it work, which is thinking on your feet. Scott looked exhausted. I mean, I see him all the time, and he came out with him and I just thought, God, you look absolutely drained.
Despite it being an exhausting surgery, it had gone well.
When Wilbur came out of surgery, he looked awful. There's no other way to dress it up. He looked like he'd been in a car accident or had been in some kind of brutal attack. Dogs constantly amaze me with their ability to deal with injury and pain. I mean, I've got pictures of him on walks with all those stitches in because he was keen to go out. He handled it. I mean, he's on pain relief, obviously, but he handled it, you know, with some class, didn't you, Poppet? He just got on with it, which is bull breeds all over, I think.
Since the surgery, life has changed dramatically for Wilberforce.
The transformation in Wilbur's life and my ability to look at him and not worry about him is unbelievable. I don't worry about him, whereas I spent a year worrying about him all the time. The small things like not having to clean his face every day, all day, and the hot spots and the sores, I think it's lovely for me, but for him, he's not carrying that pain or that irritation all of the time. The improvement was pretty much immediate. I sent Scott a video clip either day 1 or day 2 of him sleeping and said, just listen to the silence. Because we hadn't had that in a year. I'm pretty much sure any time he was asleep there was a noise, worse sometimes than others, but never silent. So yeah, it's pretty immediate, the breathing, that you can notice that the air is getting in. Most of the time now he's active. I take him swimming in a life jacket. He does agility, loves it. He walks with his sister pretty much all of the time. I guess the difference is before I would have been thinking about what he couldn't do and how I had to protect him, and now I think the opposite. He can do it, and there's very little that I've found that he can't do. So he has a pretty much an active, normal dog life now because he can breathe. The take-home message from Wilberforce's story has to be that the law needs to change about the breeding of these flat-faced dogs. That is the message I would want everyone to take home, but I'm practical. That's not going to happen in the short or medium term. So in the short or medium term, I want people to think about these breeds before they take them on. I don't want people to think that this is a miracle cure for all flat-faced breeds and all we need to do is a little bit of surgery and they'll all be fine. That's not true. They've still got a face that's too small for all of the stuff that it needs to contain. The message has to be that these flat-faced breeds are not being bred for health and temperament. They're being bred because they look a certain way. And that certain way is actually a mutation of what a healthy dog should be. And the consequences are huge. If you ignore the consequences, your dog is suffering every day of its life. If you don't ignore the consequences, it's expensive and it's time consuming. And the more aware you are, the more sad you feel because you are cleaning and dealing and creaming and bathing your dog all the time just so that it's not suffering as a consequence of what people thought was cute.
Ali and I are hoping that in telling Wilberforce's story, it'll help others in the same situation and continue the conversation about brachycephalic breeds, that all dogs should be bred to breathe. Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more life-changing stories from the world of rescue. Bye for now.